much of what we once imagined about the future is here.
Pocket-sized radio instruments will enable individuals to communicate with anyone, anywhere.
But this reshaped reality is also filled with thorny questions that aren't so easy to navigate. Welcome to Shift, a new weekly podcast from PRX.
I present to you Electro, the Moto Man.
Ladies and gentlemen.
I would say that one of my greatest skills is my ability to interact with humans.
I'm your host, Jennifer Strong. You can learn more at shiftshow.ai.
Amelia was a high school senior last year, and she really liked her school in California, especially all the activities it offers.
I participate in a lot of things, but I think the most recent one would be my winter festival. We have one at school. I dance traditional Latino, so it's baile folklorico. Yeah, it was fun, but at the same time, it was a little bit stressful for me because I usually get the dances so fast, and I don't know, this one was just I was not learning the steps. I was always getting confused. I was stressed.
Amelia says she learned the dance steps in time for the Winter Festival. Apart from dancing, she is a diligent student, and like some of the other high schoolers we've heard from in the series, she has noticed some of her classmates using AI to do schoolwork.
Yeah, just they don't care about doing the work. They just want to find an easy way to pass a class.
Amelia thinks using AI to do your schoolwork is a bad idea.
You're not learning. You're just learning how to copy and paste. Why would schools be invented then? Or why would we come to school? Or it's just a why, you know?
But last fall, Amelia found herself in a tricky situation. She was in an English class with a new teacher, someone she had never had before. And she says the new teacher didn't seem to think she was a very good writer. She kept getting poor grades on writing assignments, which surprised her because Amelia thinks she's a strong writer.
I actually took a college class with a professor in UC Berkeley. I always had A's in that class, and the professor even likes so many of my writings. And I was just so confused, I was just how am I getting A's in my college classes? And with you, I'm getting F's and C's.
Amelia couldn't make sense of what was happening. It seems like no matter what she did, she couldn't get a higher grade. So one day, when this teacher gave them an extra credit assignment in class, Amelia thought, I'm going to give this AI thing a shot. So she put the prompt in ChatGPT, got a result, edited it a little, and submitted that to her teacher. Pretty quickly, she got a private message over Google Chat on her laptop from the teacher.
And she was like, hey, can you come check with me? I think I can even look it up in my phone. Oh, right here it says, looking at the version history, I see no evidence that this is your own writing. No extra credit. See me if you wish to discuss. My whole jaw dropped, and I was like, not even AI can save me.
Amelia was busted, and she was frustrated with herself. She knew she made a mistake, but she also knew she wasn't the kind of student to skip out on an assignment. She likes to learn. And now she felt that this teacher was going to have this false impression of her.
She will now think that I use AI for the rest of the semester.
This is The Homework Machine. I'm Jesse Dukes, and I have Justin Reich with me.
Jesse, I have to tell you that I have knots in the pit of my stomach listening to that story. It's just so incredibly uncomfortable making, and you have both deep sympathy for Amelia, as well as a sense that she got a comeuppance that she needed that would probably be good for her. But that sense of you're trying so hard and you just can't, you used to get it right, now you can't get it right, it just gives me knots.
Yeah, and in the last few episodes, we have heard examples of cheating, but mostly those stories came from teachers. So I thought it would be useful for us to hear from the students who have used AI in unsanctioned ways, because we get a lot of insight about what motivates students to do that, what they get out of it, and ultimately how teachers might be able to help them make better decisions. Now, you might remember there was a study from Stanford in 2023 that suggested AI had not led to more students cheating. But that study didn't really address whether or not students, individual students, were cheating more. like maybe going from once a month to 3 or 4 times a month. It was also done pretty early after the arrival of AI, when fewer than half of teenagers even use ChatGPT, and that's, way more widespread now. And what we're hearing from the teachers and students that we're talking to is there is more cheating. The temptation to take a shortcut working on classwork has always been there, but it's just so much easier with ChatGPT. And when you use AI, you don't just get part of the answer. It's comprehensive. It's one-stop shopping. You can often just copy and paste what you get right into the assignment. And the other thing we've talked about before is how AI creates all of these gray areas about what even counts as cheating.
Well, when you think about the whole range of products that have been rapidly offered in short succession, here's a thing that can fix your grammar. Here's a thing that can write a whole paper. Here's a way you might have been taught in one class how to use GPT for brainstorming that's actually not allowed in this other class or something like that. It's just really ripe for these kinds of disagreements and mistakes.
Absolutely. And I think that's where we want to start, with examples of students using AI that fall into a gray area. So I want you to meet Miriam Reichenberg. She was a senior at Berkeley High School and a super high-achieving student. She talked to our colleague, Holly McDede, and she talked a lot about this philosophy anthropology class called Theory of Knowledge, which is actually part of the International Baccalaureate curriculum, which she really likes.
Today, I was thinking a lot of what I learned in my Theory of Knowledge class, where we kind of talk about what it means to know something.
But she says she has used AI to do assignments. However, she does have some standards for when she'll use something like ChatGPT.
I feel like people use it when they have like a mindless assignment that they don't feel like doing, that requires no thinking. I use it for those assignments. But at the same time, like if I want to feel good about the work I'm turning in, then I can't rely on ChatGPT.
So for example, she was in this environmental science class
where we had to read 5 different articles, summarize them, and write like a little commentary paragraph on each and say how it relates to current world issues. That was a very annoying assignment. I personally am not going into AP environmental science or environmental science as a field. And I spent a lot of time finding my articles, thinking about the themes between them. And then when it came time to write the summaries, I didn't feel like I should spend the time writing a concise summary when I'd theory of knowledge work I could be doing. So instead, I asked ChatGPT to produce the summary. I did not copy and paste the summary. I took like 3 main ideas. I used maybe the sentence structure they suggested, and then I wrote my own summary from that.
Well, it's clearly a practice that people are doing out in the real world. If in the future we found that a thing that we wanted schools to do was to teach people how to use these kind of AI chatbots as partners in thinking, this seems like a pretty good example of what that kind of partnership in thinking might look like. On the other hand, a thing that educators have believed for a really long time is sometimes to get good at doing things with a tool, you should do it without a tool first. Before you use the jigsaw in shop class, you should use a handsaw. Before you use a calculator, you should do the thing by hand, because that's how you develop a deeper understanding of what the tool is doing for you. It's really hard to know whether or not the gray area here is problematic if you don't know something about what it is that the teacher has as the goal for the course and the assignment.
I mean, Miriam sounds like a pretty smart, pretty thoughtful student.
There's other homework I want to be doing here. I mean,
yeah, exactly. But I guess what I was going to set up with that is that, do we feel like our high school students are good at evaluating what counts as busy work and what counts as important, meaningful work? Maybe Miriam's right about that in this case, but what do you think about students being the arbiter of this is a valuable assignment, so I'm going to use my brain, and this is not a valuable assignment, so I'm going to maybe use ChatGPT?
Generally speaking, seems like a real bad idea, though 2 things are true. One is we ask young people to do things that they perceive as busy work and that are actually very useful, developing fundamental skills and knowledge, automaticity in domains that they will need to have to persist. We also, as teachers, sometimes give lousy assignments that are not that useful. I'm guilty of that as a teacher. I'm sure every teacher can look back and be like, yeah, I just gave him that thing because I thought it was a good idea, but it's not. But ideally, we'd be at a place where most of the assignments that we're giving are really like good enough and worthy enough that students should just trust the process and that it's something that's worth doing there.
All right, I want to tell you about one other example. This comes from a student named Caitlin. Caitlin is a student in San Francisco, and she told me about an assignment where she was working on an essay about Avatar.
Not the airbender, but like, Avatar. Yeah, the blue people.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we basically had to write an entire essay about it, and I would use Grammarly to help me like fix some of my grammar mistakes because I have a lot of grammar mistakes. What ended up happening was when I did use it, apparently when she used the AI like finder, it was 99%, but really I was only using Grammarly once or twice.
So I'd never used Grammarly before. I've heard students talk about it. So I had her pull it up on her laptop. And, it looks a lot like your Microsoft Word spell check or Google Docs spell grammar check, where, it underlines a phrase that it thinks you could do a better job writing, and it will give you suggestions, and you can just click and accept the suggestions. So what Caitlin was saying was that she was accepting a bunch of the suggestions from Grammarly, and that is what flagged the AI detector.
The best AI detectors out there can actually, on average, reasonably reliably distinguish between AI-generated writing and human-generated writing. Not perfectly, but if you submitted 100 human papers and 100 AI-generated papers, it would put most of them in the right category.
Yeah, they definitely seem like they're getting more accurate, but still not 100% reliable. And the other thing is the AI detectors flag AI-generated writing, but they don't always say what kind of AI. And so Grammarly is actually a form of AI, and some of the AI checkers will be triggered by Grammarly. And Grammarly is kind of a gray area. Some teachers are fine with their students using it. They might even encourage it. Other teachers prefer that their students don't use it, but they don't always make that clear to the students. So anyway, Caitlin's teacher did what the AI detector companies recommend in this sort of situation, which is to use the AI detector report to start a conversation.
And I tried explaining my story, and she was like, oh, okay, well, this is just a warning in case you did use AI. And I'm going to tell the class this too, but I want you to rewrite your essay.
So Caitlin didn't have a terrible negative consequence. She was able to still get a good grade on the assignment, but to her, it still felt like she was being maybe accused, at least questioned, of cheating. So I asked her, how did that feel?
I felt kind of offended at first. Like, I put my time and effort in trying to write a good essay, and I just get told, oh, you're probably using AI. But yeah, I did feel offended at first, but I was like, maybe the teacher's been having, like, people in her class, like, using AI. So, I mean, it would make sense that she would say that. I wouldn't be harsh on her about that.
Jesse, it's such a sophisticated response. It's such a like, well, in this particular case, I don't think the teacher was being very fair because I think Grammarly is a legitimate aid to writing, but I could understand how there might be other students who are using AI in more capacious ways, and that would require some regulation on the part of the teacher. And so I can't be harsh on her for that. I mean, it's a brief, but really great analysis, actually.
Yeah, we have a number of interviews where both teachers and students, but especially some English teachers, have expressed ambivalence about Grammarly and students using Grammarly. And also, but there is a general recognition that a student who has used Grammarly is probably not intending to cheat, to violate the academic integrity intention in the same way that a student who just copies a result from ChatGPT is. And, when I talked with Caitlin about it, my sense was, and what she said to me was that she really was trying to do this assignment, the way that her teacher would want her to do it, and that she really does care about learning.
The entire point of learning is using your brain. It's not to get someone else's, some plagiarized help. It's not to get the AI or Google to tell you all the answers, because they're not always right.
So there are a couple things I think it's important to talk about with each of these stories. One of the things they demonstrate is the importance of school policy. In both of these cases, there's just a lack of clarity about what is permissible. And this is often the result of the fact that schools don't have a clear policy. They might leave it up to teachers to decide, and maybe teachers don't always have a clear policy. Is Grammarly cheating, or is it something it's okay to use? Teachers might have a preference that you do use Grammarly. They might have a preference that you don't. They might not express it one way or the other. They might just sort of hope that their students understand. And these expectations of what counts as cheating and what doesn't are something Jessa Kirk thinks about a lot. She works for the Academic Integrity Office at UC Santa Cruz. Prior to that, she worked at an independent school as an academic dean. One of the ways schools try to clarify what counts as cheating is through these academic integrity policies, but Kirk thinks many schools are just too vague.
I have one here from a local school. Cheating undermines the trust relationship between the student and the teacher and will be considered cause for disciplinary action. So, sure, that's true. I really don't have any idea of what that means. I don't know how they're defining cheating. I don't know what cause for disciplinary action means exactly. I don't know what that's going to look like. So I'm seeing a lot of schools wanting to address this, but seemingly feeling hesitant to be specific about what that is going to look like.
When Kirk worked for a high school, one of her jobs was to update the academic integrity policy around cheating in AI.
And what I discovered through that process of developing that was people needed specifics, what exactly was going to happen. As a teacher, what is going to happen to you and what is going to be your role when you report something? Who do you report it to and what form do you report it? Is a conversation in the copy room acceptable? Do you need to write an email? For students and families, what is going to happen to the student? Where is it recorded? Is it reported to colleges?
And we mentioned this earlier, there is that study that shows that Black students are nearly 3 times as likely as white students to be falsely flagged for cheating, with Latino students in the middle. And Kirk is saying being more clear about these policies and gray areas can help reduce false accusations.
It makes total sense to me that a policy around academic integrity would ideally specify the kinds of behaviors that are not allowed and then specify the consequences for doing disallowed behaviors. A huge problem that schools will have right now is that they do not know what that range of behaviors is. They don't know what software products are going to be introduced this year. They don't know what software products are going to pop up in their Google Classroom implementations, in their, like the other things that they already have sort of integrated in their school that their students will start using. And I think what makes all this even harder is for some of these practices, we don't even really know if they're good for learning or not. But I think this relates to the story that we just heard about Miriam in her environmental science class. We might have lots of young humans do that for a long time and then say, you know what, when you want someone to summarize something, it's a really bad idea for them to sort of look up possible summaries on ChatGPT and then kind of edit them and copy them and draw from them. It's really important for them to do it themselves. So sometimes when you're dealing with issues of academic integrity, you're sort of like, is this really a violation or not? But we're even asking a sort of deeper question here of like, is this a good thing for a learner to be doing right now or not?
Okay, Justin, we've talked about some of these gray areas and confusions, but, sometimes students know perfectly well they're crossing a line. And, we're really lucky. Over the last year and a half, we've actually interviewed a number of students who graciously opened up to us about using AI to do their assignments, even in situations where they knew that their teacher probably wouldn't approve of what they were doing. And based on those conversations, I've developed a bit of a theory about why students turn to AI. Based on what the students have told me, they value learning on the whole. They like to learn, but they turn to AI when they feel like they're not learning, like they've hit some kind of wall, they've hit some kind of blockage. We've already heard from Amelia at the beginning of the show. She thought she was a good writer. She likes school, she likes learning, but no matter how hard she worked, her teacher just didn't like her writing. And Amelia didn't feel like she had the kind of relationship with her teacher where she could mediate that, where she could ask for help. So that's when she turned to AI. And we've got a couple other stories like that. But Justin, now I want to bring in one of our researchers and reporters, Natasha Esteves. She interviewed a bunch of students during our research, and I wanted to have her on to talk about one particular conversation that she had. So Natasha, you talked to one student named Leandro. Can you just tell us a little bit about him?
Yes, so Leandro was a high school senior at the very end of his senior year when I interviewed him. He was already off to college soon after graduation and is interested in studying forensic sciences. just letting you know, I do know his family and have known Leandro for a very, very long time. And he described to me how he would use ChatGPT for some assignments during his senior year.
I would copy and paste the question, and whatever the answer was, I would either proofread it, take out like big words that I don't know, or like big words that I've never heard of, and then I would start like changing everything, and then I would run it through like an AI detector, and then whatever would come up as a detector, I would change it, and then I would just submit it.
That's a lot of work to not do the work.
Yeah. It was, you were doing work to not do work, but it would also make life easier.
It is kind of funny to think about the kinds of thinking that students do and do not want to do. Like, you're in your senior year, probably your grades don't matter that much at this point, and you literally could just like sit there and write the answer to the question. But for whatever reason, the thing that Leandro wants to do is this sort of cockamamie kludge so that he can do busy work, but not actual thinking. It's almost like the exact opposite of the students who are avoiding busy work. It's like, well, this might be a legitimate thing to do, but I'm going to turn it into busy work so that I don't really have to think.
We're gonna mechanize it. Yeah, Natasha, why did he start cheating in this class? Did he not like his teacher for some reason or something like that?
No, in fact, he specifically mentioned that he did like this class and that he very much liked this teacher. The sense I got was that he was checked out. He had mentioned in our interview that he had worked really hard for 3 years. The sense was kind of like, I've had enough. I'm at the end. I'm checked out. I have senioritis. That feeling you have towards the end of high school when maybe you've already been accepted to college or made post-high school plans where you already have your eyes on what's coming next and you may not be as invested in what you're doing for class when graduation is around the corner.
Well, one of the things that we know adolescents like doing is boundary pushing. That is a totally normal thing for you to be doing during your adolescence. And one way that you could explain this event is that during this senior year, like solving the problem of boundary pushing in this particular way was more interesting to him than solving the problem of doing the homework itself, even though both problem solvings actually required like roughly the same amount of work, maybe, or similar amounts of work.
Justin, I think it's great that you mentioned boundaries. There's one more little piece of tape that Natasha recorded from Leandro that I wanted to play for you. This is when Natasha asks him what teachers should know in order to try to stop AI cheating.
What do you think teachers should know, like from your perspective as a student?
Just learn all the websites and stuff like that, like all the detectors, like how it works and stuff like that.
But then if they do that, they would catch you.
Yeah, but that's kind of like the point, though.
So do you wish you would have been caught?
In a sense, yeah.
Why?
Because I've gotten away with this so many times. Like as soon as the senior year started, I was using ChatGPT and I was never caught once.
So what do you think would happen if you were caught?
If I was caught, what she would probably do is just tell me just not to use it again, and I probably wouldn't use it again.
You probably wouldn't?
No.
Be honest, I'll die.
I would get if I would get called out for it, then no, I wouldn't. Especially since it was a college class too.
Natasha, do you believe him that when he says he would have actually preferred to have been caught by his teacher?
Yes, and not only because I know him. This reminds me of a lot of the conversations I had with the teachers that we interviewed, who are teachers I didn't know, who were talking about students I never met, where they describe a scenario in which every single time they have a conversation with a student about having been caught, the student would confess and repent and would truly make an effort. And to Justin's point earlier, I think that this is a little bit about, not just adolescents, like I'm thinking even toddlers, right? I don't know if you've ever been around a toddler and seeing them misbehave and make eye contact with you while they're pushing the vase off the table or something. I think in every stage of development, well into early adulthood, there is so much testing the limits. And that very much happens in classroom settings. And I think that that's what this is an example of. I think, yes, I think he's being honest. And I think this is probably the case for most students.
And it's amazing that Leandro said, I wish someone had set the boundaries for me. That is also a very common adolescent reaction of, I want to push the boundaries. In part, they're pushing the boundaries to find them. They're crossing lines so that they can learn where the lines are. That's a really important part of development. Now, I do want to put an important fine point on, we've just sort of proposed a principle maybe, which is that, or Leandro proposes a principle. Teachers should assume that students are potentially using AI to cheat and should try to catch them. That is in direct contrast to another principle that you will hear, which is that it's incredibly important to build trusting relationships with students. And if students feel like they are surveilled all the time, then you will not build that trusting relationship with them, and they'll be trying to figure out how to get around you, and they won't be doing their best work and all these kinds of things. I mean, so often in schools, good design is holding ideas in tension together at the same time. And I think this is going to be one of them that teachers have to face for a while.
I want to run what you guys are talking about through my own framework here. I gave you my hypothesis earlier, which is that students generally value learning. They turn to AI or they turn to some other form of cheating when there's something stopping them from learning.
I think every student we've heard from has a kind of hit the wall moment in their story. Amelia's wall is that she's not getting the grades in her writing class that she wanted to be getting. And then Miriam's wall is kind of, I'm bored with this one assignment and I want to be doing this other assignment. Leandro's wall is burnout. So good teachers need to be doing two things. One is trying to figure out how you take those walls away, how you sort of like motivate people. Ideally, Amelia would have had a better sense of the pathway to getting better grades, as opposed to feeling like, I just don't know what I do to satisfy this person. Ideally, the environmental science teacher gives a little bit more motivation for doing the assignment. But at the same time, another answer is, and Leandro suggests this, make cheating hurt worse than hitting the wall. Make there be some kind of disciplinary consequence. So when you do hit that wall, you're like, well, I better keep pushing against this wall, because as frustrating as this is right now, it's really going to be worse when I turn in this assignment that I had a machine do for me when I was really supposed to do it myself.
Well, Justin, I have another story of a student whose teacher made cheating hurt more than hitting the wall. And that brings us to David. When I spoke to him, I believe he was a sophomore. He is Black. He is in an urban district in the Midwest with a lot of poverty. And based on the way he described his school, it sounds like a public charter school, which is known for strong academics, but also strict enforcement of rules. And he says he generally avoids using AI to cheat, but he did use AI on one occasion for an assignment when he was in 9th grade.
I was really exhausted, and I just wasn't getting the material at all. It was 12 a.m. and I was really trying to get to bed because I had a test the next day. I knew I needed to get some rest, so I used AI to help me.
So yeah, he said he copied some of the output from ChatGPT directly, but he also wrote some other parts of the assignment. But unlike Leandro, his teacher put the assignment through the AI detector, and David got flagged. The teacher automatically gave him a 0 and told David it was because he had used AI. So, I asked him, did he feel like his teacher had handled this situation well?
Yes and no. Yes, because, she was just doing her job, and, I did plagiarize, so yes. But also no, because she didn't really ask me what happened or why did I feel the need to use AI instead of just asking for help or something.
Well, first, I just want to observe again that this student has an extraordinarily sophisticated understanding of what's going on here. They're like, well, here's the thing that I did wrong. And actually the thing that I should have been doing is, asking for help, putting more effort, managing my time better. And it really would have been better if the teacher, instead of just punishing me, had also probed into these issues and suggested that I do these things, which I just told you that I should be doing. And that I think is amazing and is another great reminder that when we talk to students in ways that we really make them feel like we're listening to them, as reporters can do really well, they can tell you what's going on there. It's so hard to judge the teacher course of action without having the teacher perspective as well. There's a million things that could be going on there. One thing is that the teacher could be overwhelmed, and the most that they could put together to solve this particular problem on this particular day was giving this kid a 0 and moving on. Maybe they gave this kid a 0 because there are dozens of other cases across their 200 students where this is happening, and they literally do not have the time to provide the support that they would like to each individual student. The teacher might have assessed that David actually didn't need anything else other than the 0 and the do it again. Maybe the teacher judged like, David knows that if he needs help, he should come and ask me. That actually might all be wrong. But you can imagine a well-meaning teacher saying, you know what this person needs is like a sharp, clear consequence. But it does seem like that, David's diagnosis of the situation is absolutely right, where in the ideal set of circumstances, not only would we say, okay, you didn't do this assignment, and so here's the grade you're going to get, and here's the consequences moving forward. But also, we would hope that either the teacher or a dean or some other adult in the community would be able to go up to David and be like, hey, it's not okay that you're staying up till midnight working. What can we do to help you think this through so that you can manage your time a little better? What can we do in school? How can we support you outside of school? Those kinds of things.
One other barrier students say they face when it comes to feeling like they're not learning is the pressure to get good grades and to craft a good transcript in order to get them into, a good college and to provide other opportunities in the future. And you might remember back in episode 1, we had that student Woody, and he told us about that.
As the pacing gets faster, then more kids feel like they need it because they feel like they're going to fail if they don't have it. So it piles on itself. I'd say the number of people not using it, like the number of people holding out and being like, I'm going to do my work legitimately, is going down because it's just, there's no room for, you got to have, especially in the district where I am, where we're very grade grubby.
Woody is saying that at his district, it feels to the students that grades and achievement is more important than knowledge. And so thinking about that, and if my theory is correct that students cheat with AI because it's easy to use, widely available, and in situations where they feel like they're not learning, what can teachers and schools do about that?
I think listening to the students in this story is a great start. One of the things that we heard David say is when you identify academic integrity violations, ask students what's going on. Try to make time to have conversations about the deeper issues. That's a good one. Leandro told us that students will make bad decisions, and it is important to set policies and procedures in place that try to stop them from making bad decisions with some consequences with them and some teeth and things like that, because those kinds of boundaries help students make better decisions. A challenge we have to come up with here is we're going to be able to come up with a long list of things that teachers ought to be doing. They ought to make sure their students know how they can improve their work and improve their learning, improve their grades, how they can motivate students, how they can be conscientious of the kind of external workloads that students have and help them manage their time. And of course, teachers can't do all of those things. Like, we're just regular human beings like the rest of us. And so we sort of have to walk this line of saying, here's a set of strategies that might work, but without blaming the teachers for when this happens. I mean, ultimately, when students make academic integrity violations, they're making a bad decision, and they should feel a sense of shame and missed opportunity, and there probably should be punishment and consequences that go along with that, because you need all those things for an orderly school environment to happen. And a thing that you hear over and over again in your colleagues' interviews, Jesse, is that students know that they're in school to be learning. They tell you over and over again, like, why, we don't want to be using this stuff. We want to be actually learning. And so trying to remind students that they have those beliefs and to sort of center those beliefs in school practice. But I'm very sympathetic to all the teachers and educators that are going to be wrestling with this for the next few years, because as we've heard, even though students seem to know the right thing to do, it's hard for them to do it.
Well, we've heard about how challenging AI-powered cheating can be. It creates temptations for students, creates a lot more work for teachers. It has created a lot of anguish. So let's have some fun with AI. Next time on The Homework Machine, we're going to hear stories from teachers and students about finding ways to use this strange, new, sometimes wonderful, sometimes weird, sometimes creepy technology to support learning and education.
Being able to work with the smartest curriculum designer that's ever existed and have that at my disposal is incredible.
That's next time on The Homework Machine. This episode was produced by Andrew Meriwether and me, Jesse Dukes. We had editing from Ruxandra, Guidi, and Alexandra, Salomon. Reporting and research from Holly McDede, Natasha Esteves, Andrew Parsons, Marnette Federis, and Chris Bagg. Sound design and music supervision by Steven Jackson. Production help from Yebu Ji and Nathan Ray. Data analysis from Manee, Ngozi, Nnamani, and Manasa Kudumu. Special thanks to Josh Sheldon and Eric Klopfer. Administrative support from Jessica Rondon. Along with Jessa Kirk, I spoke with her colleague Greer Murphy. Greer recently co-authored a survey of 100 academic integrity policies in higher ed and found that they were often unclear and overly legalistic in their language. We'll link to that in our show notes. The music that you're hearing with the harpsichord was created by Steven Jackson, with some composition and recording help from me and Andrew Meriwether. A lot of the music you hear in this series comes from Q Shop, which is also a music collective that the three of us participate in, along with some other excellent musicians. Q Shop is on Bandcamp. The research and reporting you heard in this episode was supported by the Spencer Foundation, the Kapor Foundation, the Jameel World Education Lab, the Social and Ethical Responsibility of Computing Initiative at MIT, and the RAISE Initiative, Responsible AI for Social Empowerment and Education, also at MIT. And we had support from a company that makes artificial intelligence, Google's Academic Research Awards Program. OpenAI, you guys want to get in on this? Anthropic? Meta? The Homework Machine is a program of the Teaching Systems Lab Justin Reich Director, located at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, which let us use their harpsichord for our original music in this series, thanks to Will Grube, Andy Wilds, and the MIT Music Department. All right, Steven, take it home. Rock that harpsichord, baby.